All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are around the planet, and welcome to the first World Endangered Writing Day. And to say that this is an exciting event is just not even scratching the surface. First of all, I want to start with an acknowledgement, two more acknowledgements, and a warning. So the first acknowledgement is that I'm coming to you from the ancestral lands of the Abenaki. And many of you, I'm sure, know the situation that Indigenous people find themselves in their surrounding societies. I've been working with the Abenaki since 2017, and they have taught me more than anyone else about what it means to be marginalized, but also how that affects the importance of their language and their history in terms of their identity and their sense of self-respect. So this absolutely goes out with gratitude to them. Two more thanks. This whole day is it's the idea of David Crystal, who many of you know as one of the great language figures in the world. He suggested it. And so this is very much in appreciation of that and all of the encouragement that he's given to the Endangered Alphabets Project over the last 12 years. The third thanks is to Piers Kelly. So Piers is an Australian anthropologist who is the only person in the world that I know of who is doing field work studying the way writing systems or scripts are created. So these are recently created scripts. And he recognizes quite rightly that these are an amazing opportunity to understand how writing works, as opposed to simply looking at how it is moved from one culture to another. The warning is that I live in the country, and the dog is right beside me, and I'm looking out over our backyard and the trees, and every so often a deer may appear. And if the deer appears, the dog is going to go berserk. I am going to try and mute this as quickly as I can and let the dog out. So this is a great opportunity for my guest to keep talking as if I weren't here. Speaking of my guest, I am absolutely delighted to kick off this first World Endangered Writing Day with Dr. Samar Sinha, who is from the University of Sikkim. And there is a really significant reason about writing itself as to why I invited Samar to join us. And it has to do with the fact that in the West, and in particular in the US, our study of language is focused almost exclusively on spoken language. And so, for example, I'm opening up my book, Writing Beyond Writing. So I'm looking at a page here, which is the linguistics offerings of the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which is a fine school with a fine linguistics department. And the courses on language cover half the page in 2 columns. There's nothing about writing. There's nothing about written language. And part of that, I think, is because we in the West, we only use one script, and we sort of assume that that's all you need and that everybody else should use one script. In fact, this is so true. There is no word for a culture that only uses one script or a culture that uses many scripts. We talk about monolingual, bilingual, but we're talking about spoken language there. So we have this extraordinary blind spot when it comes to writing because we don't see it. And Samar is in the Indian state of Sikkim. He's going to show you where that is on a map. And he's the coordinator for the Center of Endangered Languages, which is also a rarity in higher education. But in his case, this also involves studying and even promoting multiple scripts. So, Samar, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tim, for having me in this program on World's First Endangered Writing Day. Equally, I would like to convey my best wishes to all others also of this very important day of our calendar. At the same time as you, I would like to wish good evening in the East and good morning in the West. Uh,
So tell me a little bit about, first of all, about Sikkim itself, because it strikes me that it is, in order to understand why you're in the position you are, the academic position you are, it helps to understand a little bit about the state of Sikkim.
Oh, Tim, thanks a lot. I think that is very important for me to pinpoint where what we are doing in our university as well as. So I would like to go to my slides so that I can show you where exactly Sikkim is all about. So if you look at map of India, or if you look at Asia, India is in south near Indian Ocean, and we have a very big country. Of course, there is only one time zone for the entire country. And Sikkim is one of the states. Since India is a federal republic, it has got more than 28 states and 8 union territories. So after 1947, some new states were formed, and some of them they merged together. So there are kind of a different political dimensions taking place. So right now, we have got 28 states and 8 union territories, and Sikkim is like a point in a map of India, somewhere located between four international borders. Three are actually the borders, physical border with Sikkim, and they are like Tibet Autonomous Region, which is in China in the north. If you look into the east, we have a separate country of Bhutan, environmentally, ecologically a great nation. And in the west, we have got Nepal. And if you look into the south, in south we have another Indian state called West Bengal, of which Darjeeling and Kalimpong districts are adjoining to south, east, and new districts of southern Sikkim right now, currently. So Sikkim is situated politically in the map of India on the towards the northeast side, whereas it is being surrounded by three big countries in comparison to Sikkim, whereas China is a big one, and Nepal and Bhutan relatively they were bigger and stronger ones historical. As I will discuss more about it in another slide, I'll tell you more about it. So Sikkim is like a border between these four, and present day Sikkim is smaller than exactly it was maybe 100 years back or more than that. It used to be till Bangladesh once upon a time. Uh, if I move it to the next slide, you can see that prior to Sikkim is one of the states in northeast of India. Hence, government has uh, considered, along with the other northeastern states, even Sikkim, which is not geographically continuous with the northeastern state, as one of the northeastern states. So it comes under a particular Ministry of Northeastern Affairs, and it looks after its welfare also. And Sikkim, since it is strategically located, it occupies a very important role in uh, government's understanding of the borders and territories, especially in the northeast. Now, if you look into the history of Sikkim, it's quite interesting. Sikkim is known by various names. Even earlier, it was known as Indrakil, or the Garden of the Lord Indra in the Hindu mythologies. It is known as Demazong. It is known as a hidden bowl of hidden land of rice. So rice was cultivated in one sense. So Sikkim has strategically very important, and is also been very important in promotion of Buddhism in other parts, including Sikkim as well as in Bhutan and other areas. So prior to 1642, we do find some records of some kind of objects from historical sites, which records that their Lepchas were the autochthonous people of Sikkim. So they have their myths and folktales which states that they were created out of the snows of Kanchenjunga. So they attach Sikkim as, and what they call it as Malian, as the, and there are other communities whose references are found in historical text, like Muggers, who were indigenous people. Hooker, also one of the experts in the British time, called them as indigenous people. Limbus were part of the West Sikkim. After Sikkim, 1642 to 1975, a Bhutia community which had migrated once from Tibet established a empire in Sikkim, and that empire came to be dynasty came to be known as Namgyal dynasty. And Chogyal, the Buddhist king, was the religious head of the state. And till 1973, he was absolute monarch. It ran hereditarily. And after 73, then king became constitutional monarch. But after 1975, Sikkim became a part of the Indian nation state, and it became one of the states. However, between 1890 and 1947, Sikkim was part of the princely state as under the British rule, as well as when India got independent in 1947. So 47 to 75, during that period, Sikkim was a free country, is a free kingdom with the monarch, as well as it was under the protection of the Indian government of India. The tradition that was established by the British continued with the with independent India also. However, after 1975, Sikkim became a part of India, and it is one of the northeastern states, as I had mentioned earlier. So till today, if you look into the old Sikkim was up to the North Bangladesh, but today's Sikkim, Darjeeling, which was part of it, was taken by British after deed of grant in 1835. Then, whatever the hills in eastern Nepal, like Antu and Fikal and others, which are now very well-known places in Nepal, were part of Sikkim. But in the process of war and settlement and treaties, most of the parts became part of Nepal, and Darjeeling became part of British India. And what remains today is part of the former Chogyal's kingdom. So at point of time, the Bhutan used to overrun Sikkim and took some part of it because Sikkim was much larger. Then at times Nepal used to overrun and take some part of it. Similarly, British, when they joined, so they started uh, taking some parts of, and later on it became Darjeeling and Kalimpong districts currently, which is.
If I can interrupt just for a second. So, one of the things that I think is really worth pointing out here is that Sikkim is an area where you have an enormous amount of human movement from place to place. You've got, as you say, parts of that region being overrun by one culture or by another culture. And so, in the history that you're telling us, you've got this very, very sort of multicultural or polycultural history there. And it's worth bearing in mind that we in Europe and North America are used to seeing things from a lens where we were all overrun by the same military government. And so we are used to thinking of one script, partly because we were all really overrun by everybody, which is not necessarily a great argument for having one script. And Sikkim is really a great illustration for the argument of having of respecting multiple languages and multiple scripts. So yes, can you tell us a little bit more then about how this plays into the languages and scripts that are used in Sikkim today?
Yeah, sure. So the story again goes back to the slides. So if you look into Sikkim, this is what the Sikkim present day is. And Now, if you look into the communities, what Tim was talking about, Sikkim has got layers of migration in one sense. So, if you look at the autochthonous people, they are the Lepchas, whom they themselves call it as Rong. Then there are other communities like Muggers and Limbus or Chong. And when Bhutias entered, they formed a fictitious family with these two early existing communities, which were basically the Limbus and the Lepchas. So there is a kind of a cultural, symbolic brotherhood, a fictitious family relation between the Bhutias, Lepchas, and Limbus, which in Sikkim is celebrated as Lomen Shongchum. So it is basically of the three communities who forms a mother, father, and children kind of a relationship, and it's basically about the inter-community marriages, bonding, sharing kind of a thing. At the same time, after the British came to um Sikkim after 1890s when roads were established, there were a lot of migration of the Nepalese people. Prior to that, there were already Nepali people, significant number of Nepali people. Now Nepali can consider as Magar also and some Limbus also at one point of time. So they were there. Apart from there were also other communities because we know that since the Chogel's time, much before the British entry, the Nepali language was used in the court of Sikkim also. The coins were inscribed in or was minted in Nepali script also. So Nepali was present there for a very long period of time. So when Nepalis came, so in a present day, there are large number of communities under the rubric of Nepali. So if you look at it, Sikkim itself is a multi-ethnic. Within the multi-ethnic, there is another large chunk which is called Nepalis, which is an umbrella term for Kshetriya bound, now popularly known through their political consciousness as what they are known as Khas. There are Rais, there are several types of Rais, there are so many languages within it, but one of them has been taken as the Rai language. Then there is a Sunwar, which is Koich, Limbu, or Chongs, and now they are recognized as scheduled tribe within the government of India. And these three tribes are basically or linguistically called Kirats. Then there are Kamidamai, which comes under scheduled caste under government of India. Then there are Gurung, Magar, Thami, Maji. They are some of them are OBC, state OBC, and some of them are central OBC. Similarly, Tamang comes under ST, and Newar, Bhujel, and others are recognized as state OBC and as well as central OBC. So if you look Sikkim, we do have layers of layers. So we have Bhutias, Lepchas, Nepalis, as well as what is locally called as Madishes, who are basically people from Bihar or Marwaris, and etc. And it's quite because people do have jobs over there, they have come, they have worked over there. So in a sense, it's a multi-ethnic. However, Sikkim has its own record of population as per the 1975 treaty. So they do have a specific which is being counted. Therefore, when we count Sikkim's population, it is just 6 lakhs only, not more than that. But out of 6 lakhs, all of them are not the Sikkim subject holders. There are very less people who don't have the Sikkim subjects also, but they are counted under population. And literacy is quite high, and density you can see because large number of part is also over. So this is how Sikkim's history is. So Sikkim is also a bicultural diversity in terms of nature, culture, and language. So you find a scenario communities, large number of communities, and there are large number of languages which are in different stages, which are endangered, moribund. Some of them are in a heritage, and some of them are trying to get revived. So if you come to Sikkim and study or work on languages, you will have very nice adventures. You will discover new things as we did in some time. So these are the languages overall, and roughly the communities also in Sikkim. And the bold ones are the one in which we have got opportunity to work on preliminary work, but still we need to work further.
So I love the notion that this is a great opportunity for a linguistic adventure, because what you're describing would be described in, for example, the UK as migrant workers or immigrants or whatever. And there is a very strong sense that that they are to a degree less legitimate, that they should somehow, to use the US term, they should become part of the melting pot and be assimilated into broader Anglo culture. But what you're talking about in Sikkim is a recognition that there should be a kind of a mutual respect among, when you have this multi ethnic culture, you should actually accept that these people each have their own history, their own language, their tradition, and therefore a culture of mutual respect needs to be engendered.
Yes, true. Yeah, I think the notion how in Indian Union it operates is like we do provide different programs which will uplift the communities by recognizing them as scheduled tribe, which gives them a specific amount of specific resource allocation, or by considering a scheduled caste or OBC. So large number of communities in Sikkim within the state are OBC communities, which is considered as a backward community historically, socially, economically, in some sense. So now they have been given an opportunity so that the community comes out of that stage and attains a higher state of social development, of a social objective. So in the next slide, I think I can show you. So if you look into this aspect, so Sikkim has got 12 official languages, highest in probably in any country, as what Tim was suggesting. And of course, definitely in India, no other than the Indian Union, no other state has got 12 official languages. So first four languages, Nepali, Lepcha, Limbu, and Bhutia, were recognized very early in 1977. And they were the languages of the four communities, Lepchas, Limbus, Bhutias, as well as Nepali. Later on, after 1990, when there was a movement in India for other backward communities to come forward to be the part of the identity process to so that the resources are allocated, so whole thing came under OBC movement. So the Rai, Gurung, Magar, Newar, and even Tamang and Sherpa and Sunwar also, their language, the community started a politicalization process, and where they started to see themselves as something distinct within the rubric of Nepali, but something distinct from each other, so that they have their own resource allocation in education, employment, or even in governance. So what it took shape how to make themselves distinct was through language, through script, through dress, through rituals, culture, etc., etc. So on after 1992, in 1997, other seven languages got recognition and became accepted as the state official languages. And in 1920, in 2023, when Vishnu's, I will talk about him more in detail later on, when Vishnu's work and came and was presented to the repeatedly to the last two governments of Sikkim, the current government in 2023 recognized the effort of the community, and the language was recognized as one of the official languages of Sikkim. So altogether there are 12 languages. However, 11 are endangered languages, and there are more than 34 plus endangered languages. Please remember one thing in Sikkim: official status and endangered status is fine, but anywhere in Indian Union, if you have to have a language recognized, then your language cannot be recognized without a script. So script becomes much more important for any community. Yeah, Tim, that's how I see that why the script is very important for the communities, because without script, language cannot be recognized. Without language being recognized, there is no proper allocation in education or community wise acceptance or to move upwards. As you said, that all communities are equal. So, therefore, when some communities come with a certain degree of advancement of their language, literature, culture, the government definitely recognizes that effort and has given them so that it it can be continued in future generation. So in a sense, the government's effort is all to is to empower these local communities so that their language, culture, and even the population keeps growing, and of course, so that the state building process can remain
Right.
fine.
Right. So, and one of the ways, and this is just extraordinary to me when I first saw it, and I think to many people in the West. So the government newspaper or newsletter, I believe, is the Sikkim Herald, and
Yeah,
that is published. Okay, ready for this? That
yeah,
is published in what, 8 different scripts?
yeah, uh, yeah. Jimmy, I just want to show you it in slides. If you look into this
Yeah.
slide again,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so if you look at these scripts, look at the official languages of Sikkim. So these are 12 official recognized languages of Sikkim, and all of them except Nepali, which I consider as endangered, but officially it has not been counted, is endangered languages. Okay, fine, that's based on the spoken idea of spoken. But if you look into the script, Sambota was there from the very beginning. It is must be several thousand, hundreds of years old. Rong is several hundred years old. Srizanga is Tamyak is developed from Sambota. And similarly, Newari used to have 9 scripts, so one of the scripts was recognized. It's also very old. And look at these 4 scripts:
Right.
Khema for Kurung, Magaraka for Magar, Zetisa for Sunwar, and Kripa Salyan, which is also called Rai Lipi
Right.
or Rai script, and Kharpa. These are what you call it as custom scripts of Sikkim. So these are the scripts which are recently been developed in Sikkim. So if you look into it, you do have Devanagari, Sambota, Rong script, Sirizanga, Tamyag, Newari, Khema, Magaraka, Zetisa, Kripa Salyan. These are the scripts in which Sikkim Herald is published, not just Sikkim Herald, even the official proceedings of the state assembly needs to be translated into these
I
languages.
love it. I
So
love
you
it.
can, and there are schools. I'm not saying Bhujel right now because Bhujel is a very young language, so Sikkim Herald is not been published. Of course, Vishnu and other his group is trying to put news in on the oral form, and they are doing their own. But all these 11 languages, these 11 scripts plus, of course, Hindi uses Devanagari, but orthography is different. So Hindi is also there, and English is also there. So if you look into it, almost 12 to 13 script languages are used, and all these scripts and all these languages, they do have their specific script and orthography, hence they are published. So when Bhuzel will also come into this phase, there will be large number of scripts, and
So,
of course, and
yes.
it's
So,
available online, one can access it.
So this is again a wonderful antidote to this kind of thinking that we tend to have over this side of the world, which is, oh, that's just inconvenient, or shouldn't everybody else do the same thing? Because the whole idea of publishing the proceedings, the official government proceedings in multiple scripts, it's like, oh, we can't afford that. But if you're going to regard each of these cultures with respect, you have to respect their language, you have to respect their
Yes.
script. So tell us a little bit about your former student, Bishnu, because again, one of the interesting things about the academic tradition in the West is that it studies, it observes, but it does not interact. It does not get involved. And so Bishnu has been very much involved. Tell us a little bit about what he has accomplished.
Okay, uh, slides, please. Yeah, I'll go for yeah, team. Before I put Vishnu, I would like to give a background in which Vishnu had started to work.
Sure.
So, and if you look at Sikkim, Sikkim and is situated in a hotspot. If you look into Anderson and Harrison's model, so you find we are hotspot, but not just a biodiversity hotspot, but also a linguistic hotspot, language hotspot, where our languages are highly undocumented. There are high level of endangerment, and there is low level of documentation in terms of writing system, grammars, and dictionaries. So Sikkim is in very much over there. At the same time, if you look into the scripts, our scripts are endangered because there is a low level of documentation, and there is also high diversity of there are almost 10, 12 to 13 scripts in over there, as well as they are endangered because the speakers are endangered. If language speakers are endangered, the script automatically becomes, because they are the users of those script. Now, in this situation, what Vishnu has tried to do is to uplift a community which was marginalized, which was left out for a very long period of time. So why Vishnu's work became much more important is because Vishnu started to take his community out of that situation to a better situation where his community was not recognized historically, economically. There were a lot of uh, issues, lot of anecdotes, lot of comments, negative comments issued with his community. But when Vishnu came and started to take up his work on his language, on his community, he felt that script is the most important thing. Since his language was a moribund language, was not spoken, was in a sense, it was almost an extinct except the few words. So Vishnu started to learn a language. I need to tell you one thing also, that Sikkim, Darjeeling and Kalimpong, as well as Duars area of northern Bengal, and Nepal and Bhutan to, certain parts, there is a contiguous area where you find the speakers of Bhujel, Lepcha, Bhutia, and all sort of different languages which are there in Sikkim is also spoken. Like Lepcha is also there in Bhutan and Nepal, as well as in Darjeeling. Similarly, Bhujels are also found in other places. So what Vishnu started to work was that script becomes much more important. So he started to work on his language, because to have a script, to he started to work, he learned his language, he went to Nepal, he learned his language, he came back, started to have a linguistic study, and he started how to revitalize his language, how to strengthen his community. He started different programs because he saw that script is one of the ways, or the only way possible, where his language will be recognized. So he started to work on his MPhil. So when he started to work on his MPhil, he came with this idea that since his script is not there so far, so he thought that most of the community members, Bhujel community members, are fine, they are okay with Devanagari script, which is used by Hindi, Nepali, Bodo, and other languages of India. And since they can read and write in Nepali, so the script was fine. So Vishnu's proposal in his MPhil program was that, okay, we will study the sound system phonology and we'll devise orthography based on it. And that was exactly what we devised. I was a supervisor, so that's what we devised. It was much better system than what Professor Dan Rigmi has suggested at one point of time. So we tried to assimilate how you write aspirated nasals in Devanagari. So we came with a system where it can be worked out without without rupturing the whole akshara system of the Devanagari. So it was, so when Vishnu took up this proposal of orthography along with the language recognition to government of Sikkim, the the person in power rejected it, that how can a Tibeto-Burman language can have an Indo-Aryan script, because that's a very general understanding of any lay person. Of course, that is not true. Bodo is also a Tibeto-Burman language, but the script is, they have accepted as Devanagari with their own orthography. So, so it's not a problem actually. But then once it gets rejected from a government, you have to redo your work. So Vishnu came up with this idea that once upon a time, so if I show it to you here, so Vishnu came up with the idea that Sri C.B. Bhujel has developed or had developed a script called Kharka script for Bhujel language in 1980s. But that script was not in practice, it was not in public domain, it was not in circulate. So Vishnu, in collaboration with him, he revised, revitalized that script, and in 2018, he came with this proposal that Bhujel community will be accepting Kharpa script. So there was an initial Kharpa script which was developed by CB Bhujel. And Vishnu later on revised it along with CB Bhujel, who is still here in Sikkim. So he revised and came up with a better system which was linguistically sound and it was more economical in terms of character. In the same year, with one of my colleagues, Bishnu's friend also, both of them, they digitalized the script. So they developed a, a digital font for Kharpa script. Since then, we can write Kharpa now comfortably. So at some point, Devanagari script is in the back burner, but Kharpa is in the forefront. But now the question is also there. The Bhujils in West Bengal, especially in Darjeeling and Sikkim, they are using Devanagari script. Since I'm not involved with their work, so I am not sure that how far they are uh, phonologically sound and how far orthographically it represents the phonology of the language. So in Sikkim, Bhujils are using Kharpa, whereas in Darjeeling side, they are using Devanagari script. And in Nepal, they are using Devanagari and Kharpa was totally unheard a few years back. So now, since Kharpa is recognized script, I wish this Kharpa script to be accepted by the communities across the borders so that it can be taken up for higher, maybe for other kinds of recognition in other states also, so that it can work. Otherwise, by putting it up in a way which is already been recognized and not recognizing itself by the community also, we are going to create a problem later on. So I request this to come to a consensus where Kharpa, which is already recognized by government of Sikkim, to be recognized in other parts where Bhujil language is spoken and written, so that we can continue the efforts of the community much in a much better way. It's not a
So,
problem to have many scripts, but still, we at this stage, what we require is to have one uniform script so that language can be developed and the whole idea of empowering language and the community takes place.
so there are two things here that I really want to point out, especially for our listeners who don't know the sort of linguistic geopolitics of your region. One is that there is a traditionally, especially in academia, there is a strong prejudice against creating scripts or created scripts. There is a sense that somehow they are artificial and not real. And yet, as you've pointed out, almost half the scripts in use in Sikkim, and as the research we've done at the Endangered Alphabets Project shows, about half of all of the scripts currently in use in the world have been created by an individual or a small group of people specifically for their culture. The second point that you've made, which sort of ties into this, is that there are very, very strong reasons for doing this, which may be linguistic, as in the other script doesn't represent a particular language very well, but they're also issues to do with respect. The fact that by creating a script for a particular culture, they no longer become sort of like poor cousins or a subculture of somebody else. Yes. They then are able to sort of take this on board as a visual emblem of who they are, as opposed to, in a sense, extending a period of marginalization or subjugation by somebody else, which is sort of epitomized by just the pure visual impact of the writing that they have been using. So we have about 5 minutes left before we start taking questions. Those of you who are in the audience, please, by all means, put your questions in the comments tab. You'll see it right over on your top right-hand corner of your screen. We currently have a decent number of comments, and our senior executive line producer, Alec, is curating your comments, and we'll be bringing them in for discussion in a couple of minutes. So, Samar, tell me where, in addition to working to extend the use of the kind of the custom Bugel script. What else are you working on in your department, and what else are your students working on?
Uh, Particularly, if you look into with respect to script, the graphic politics of autonomy is very much there. So new scripts are being resignified. As I said, that community needs to have a very distinct identity. And
Wait. That is such a great phrase. The graphic politics of autonomy. Somebody write that one down. Okay, sorry, carry on.
so the invention of new scripts as well as the resignification of existing one. Invention of new scripts, basically the custom scripts. So, and moreover, if you look into the governmental understanding of language, a language without a script is not a language for them. It will be like something called dialect or something. So script becomes a much more important, and moreover for its semiotic system also, and it gives a prestige and as well as a social sense that yes, it is a language. That's the very popular or a layman's understanding. I know linguistically it is not sound, but then when we operate in the field with the communities, that's what we face it, even from the lowest to the highest governmental level. So Sikkim University, I'm working in the Nepali department, and I'm very lucky to say that our Nepali department is interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary in its approach in its inception. And currently, with the new education policy, we have also included large number of interdisciplinary courses, and we work, teach, and research on Nepali literature, both from India and Nepal, literary theories, and linguistics, Nepali linguistics, translation, semiotics, and various other areas. So these are the disciplines in which our students are basically trained. And this is some of the photographs of my department with students in convocation, where Vishnu's PhD Viva, you can see it in the top left, and with my colleagues of the department. And Sikkim University, I would like to mention two works. First by Rina, who worked on grammar of Kulung, being a member of the indigenous Kulung community. She is the first from her community to work on the grammar of Sikkim also, and as well as all over the world. She also developed an Devanagari best orthography for her community, and she presented her paper also on it. So what her community found was that since Kulungs can read and write Devanagari, why not they develop a system where Kulung speech sounds, phonemes can be represented in the Devanagari system. So Rina and we developed the system, and and it proved to be a very good robust one so far. And in fact, my teacher Professor Pramod Pandey was there, so I also took his suggestions, and we make certain changes, and it seems it's pretty good, and community has accepted, and probably when Kulung will go for recognition, this is what they have planned to do it. So that's one area where we work on. Another was Vishnu's work, which is more important because Vishnu's language was no longer spoken in Sikkim, only the phatic terms. So Vishnu developed first the Nepali Devanagari West script orthography, which was rejected, as I mentioned earlier. Then Kharpa was revived, and he developed an orthography. He developed a primer. He started doing language classes. This is the most remarkable thing that what he has done it. Vishnu is not just a scholar of linguistics, but he is also an activist of his community who has worked for the empowerment of his community, both as well as both in linguistically as well as in other socioeconomic terms, also for recognition as OBC or recognition for as a scheduled tribe community, so that they can have a greater participation in the resource allocation. So Vishnu's work particularly is in focus because he has revived a language, he has revived a script, he has revived his community from a low self-image to a very high image where his language is recognized now. And that's his greatest contribution, was that he managed to get a recognition for his language in his lifetime, which is normally not possible. Even if you look into the case of Nepali language recognition, it took a very long period of time. Many people didn't live long to see, but Vishnu in his lifetime he managed to do all those things, and he's still he's continuing his work. He worked in the Center for Endangered Languages also, where most of his Bujal's work started. So he started to make a dictionary, primer, and a lot of other things which are also publicly available now. And later on, apart from my departmental responsibilities, uh, and being the coordinator of Center for Endangered Languages, I coordinate the work over there, and we work with the different communities. Similarly, in the new project, Sikkim's Endangered Language Documentation Project, we worked on three Kirati languages, where one was Kulung, another was Bantawa, another was Limbo. So we walked and we started documenting. Right now, we are in finalization of our outcomes. So that will be as same as what we had planned earlier for the Center for Endangered Languages.
So
And right
I
now,
I need to cut
yeah,
you
sure.
off there because we need to go on to the question and answer. But I would just underline one thing that you've now said twice, which is that areas of high linguistic diversity are typically also areas of low documentation. So if ever there was an opportunity, there it is. So,
Yeah,
Samar, thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you.
Let's move on to the questions. And
Sure.
Alec Julian has been monitoring the questions, and we're now going to hear his sonorous and dulcet voice suggesting some questions, which are mostly going to be for you. Alec, what are people asking? What are people saying?
What a build-up. Sonorous and delicate. There aren't any explicit questions. There are a bunch of interesting comments from Marie, and I'll highlight a couple here. Maybe you can speak to the historicity of it. Oh, I guess I can only do one at a time. So I don't remember the context of this, but there's a follow-up.
So while you're pulling that together, I should say that Marie is extraordinarily active in the Sylheti language and community. She also is an academic who is unusually involved in the welfare, linguistically and otherwise, of the Sylheti community, both in the division of Sylhet in Bangladesh, but also in London, in the Bangladeshi or Sylheti community there. Okay, the Indian government still follows that northern Indian communities are being forced to adapt Hindi and the Devanagari script because their local languages don't have a history of writing. Samar, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I can say that in India, the issue of script is much more. It's not just very simple that you can write in any one of them. It's a big country. There are governmental plans how to work with it. As you said that we don't have a history of writing. There may be some scripts which may not have history of writing, but there are a large number of scripts which were in practice in British time also. So, but with the passage of time, as we move towards and more with this notion of national language and the schedule and the politics of language, as well as language policies, looking into the job opportunities, looking into the educational mediums, large number of people have shifted here and there to different language and Devanagari script. Yes, you are true when you are saying that you are forced to. Yes, census does so, because census doesn't recognize any language as a separate language if the speakers are very less number of, and they recognize all these languages, they club it together under Hindi. So Hindi is actually a conglomerate of more than 56 languages. And Devanagari script is one of the scripts that is been used largely in Hindi, Sanskrit, and other. But there are other scripts also. Uh, of course, then again, the issue is also that how far it is in practical use, how far the community is using, how far the community is aspiring to make it, whether it is just a linguistic claim, or or an, or it's just because we are linguists, we know that it's to be like this or that, we can do it. That's only the, but at the practical level, how far it is possible. That's why I was trying to make you understand one thing. There is a governmental understanding which might be very true when Marie is saying that it is a kind of a colonial, but that's what true is. But so many laws and rules so far are still colonial. So what is there, what is language for a government bureaucrat is something that you can write. If you can't write, if you write it in Roman, they will not accept it. Like the case of Bhujan, when it was written in Devanagari, it was not accepted. So you need to write in a script, then only it is possible. There were long debates. Like Manipuri was once written in Bangla script, but then the whole community started to take up, so it is slowly replaced by the Maithili, their own script of the Maithis. So in India, the script and language issues are not just very simple issues, but they are intertwined with religion, patronage, and a lot of other issues,
And in
including
fact,
education.
what you say about the census is very interesting because, as far as I know, there is no country in the world that in its census includes questions about script. And
Yes.
so, consequently, we can make guesses about the number of users of spoken languages, but we actually have next to no solid information about the number of users of scripts.
Tim, what is very important now is that Government of India has come out with national education policy where mother tongue education for primary level is a must kind of a thing. So now I think the issue of script will be much more important. The issue of endangered language, minority languages, smaller languages will be much more important. So I know that in spirit is in there, but to make it pragmatically work, so we really need to speed up our documentation of scripts as well as languages, because if a language is spoken at home, then we want to write it because we want to bring it in education. Therefore the issue of script will be much more. Suppose somebody speaks a language, not Hindi but some other language, and that language has got some script, I think that script needs to be rewritten, and it has to come into the education with the with this national education policy. I think national education policy is going to redefine really about a long time about language and script in India. It's going to be a game changer.
Well, we have time for one last question. This is from Sikkim itself. How do you look to the development of the Lepcha language and literature within the past few years and maybe the next few years? And we've got literally 2 minutes for this.
Past few years, I will see that apart from my university, Sikkim University, Kanchenjunga State University, recognized, as well as uh, Alpine University, also recognized Lepcha, Limbu, Bhutia as the languages, and in some of these university, PhD programs have started. So these are recent developments. Another development that I would like to say after 5 years, but I'm announcing, is that one of my colleagues, Bingma, is working on grammar of Rong of Lepcha language. He's my colleague in the Lepcha department. So I think that is one more new development for language. Apart from literature, I think it's more what community centric, and I don't know much about the literature. I'm sure that Sikkim Lepcha literary organization is doing much more.
Wonderful. Okay, so I have some books to give away. And so I'm going to deal with that in just a second. But first of all, Samar, thank you so much for staying up until the middle of the night to come and join us today. And thanks for talking about all the extraordinary work that you and your students and your department are doing. I hope they're suitably recognized in the community. And I look forward to talking with you again at some point in the future.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 3 books to give away. And two of them are, I've chosen them because they're from, roughly speaking, that northern South Asia region. So one of them is one of the books that has been published by our keynote speaker, Mong Nhu. He has, this is in English and in Marma. And this was for mother tongue schools in Bangladesh in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. This is a primer in Zolai, which is a minority language and script right up in the northeast corner of India. And then the third book that we're giving away is The One and Everything, which I was privileged to help a little bit on. And it's a children's book on the importance of minority writing systems, believe it or not. It is probably the first children's book ever to be about endangered alphabets. And the way that you can get one of these books is you have to go to our Atlas of Endangered Alphabets, which is at endangeredalphabets.net. And I want you to go to the tab that says Alphabets. And one of the languages and scripts that Samar talked about was lepcha, or also known as wrong. And I want you to find what is the first word of the second paragraph of our profile of that script. And the first 3 people to find that word and to email it to admin@endangeredalphabets.com. That's admin, ADMIN, at endangeredalphabets.com. First 3 people will each get a copy of one of these books. Make sure you include your mailing address so we can send it to you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will be back in a few minutes with our next session. You may want, while in the intervening time, to go and have a look at our 3 other main websites: endangeredalphabets.com, the Atlas, as I mentioned, at endangeredalphabets.net, and the World Endangered Writing Day site right there. All of those links are there. And if you would like to know more about any of these subjects, I have pretty much tried to put everything I know about writing into my new book, Writing Beyond Writing. So you can find that there. Thanks so much, and we will be back shortly.